All right. Well, everybody, welcome back to the podcast. We got Michael. Is it Lowe or Lau? Lowe, right?
It's pronounced Lao, actually.
There you
We
go.
just pronounce it wrong for some reason because everybody knows the store Lowe's, but we decided to go against the grain.
Okay, I love it. So Michael Lau, he is known as the Ozonaut from Simply O3. Really cool story with his family and how he got into ozone therapy, and he does lots of things that we're about here, like breathing, cold exposure, being conscious of your health and taking your health into your own hands. So welcome to the podcast, Micah. I'm super pumped to have a conversation with you.
Yeah, thanks, man. And breathing is wonderful. I'm a huge fan of breathing.
Right, we do it with first thing we do
Both.
when we're born, last thing we do when we die, and nobody really thinks about it twice. So
Yeah, both intentionally and not intentionally. It's good in all forms. So
right, yeah, 100%. Amazing. So I don't know, I'd love to get started by hearing. I know I've kind of done a little bit of the creep and research, and I know you were going to school to be a nurse and ambulance working, and your brother was sick with cancer, and your dad kind of got into this ozone stuff, and which led down a cool path for you. I'd love to hear from you just a background of your story and however much you want to share, or how you got to where you are.
yeah, well, you did get down the rabbit hole. That's cool, man. So, I mean, it's a super long story, but I'm going to do the abridged version. So, essentially, my brother had rare brain cancer, went through the Johns Hopkins medical system, which, we're all on board at the time because it's like cutting edge of science, right? And it is. It's like it's a solid program overall, but I think has its drawbacks getting into some of that conventional stuff where they're cut, burn, and poison is kind of the methodology without a whole lot of thought of quality of life and that kind of thing. So they started doing a lot of experimental stuff, like because he lived past what they expected. So they're like, hey, we don't really have anything else, but we can run experiments essentially. And so they do like open brain surgeries as experiments. They do like there was this one drug that was extremely toxic that only worked for 13% of people, and you had to have a particular genotype for it to have the effect that they were looking for. They don't bother testing for the genotype. So that leads myself, my dad, and just kind of our family in general down a rabbit hole of like, what are ways that we can support Matt and, help to try to help raise his quality of life. So that kind of led us down a path of looking outside of what might be conventional at the time, like hyperbaric oxygen, super helpful for them. That's when you get in a chamber and they pressurize it with pure oxygen, and then it's flushing your whole system with oxygen. Extremely helpful. And down that rabbit hole found ozone therapy, which is kind of the thing that I'm primarily involved with, is a treatment called ozone therapy, which is like a gas treatment that can be used and it has some similar properties to hyperbaric, although very different. And I essentially started by there's a ton of research out there at the time, over 1,800 medical studies. But if you wanted to get a consensus or just an understanding of how does ozone therapy work with cancer, or what is like, where does it fit in? You had to read 100, 150 studies and do a lot of digging just to even find them. So it was really difficult to get just like a quick knowledge of like, hey, here's the state of the art, here's where it sits, and here's the literature on it. So I took it upon myself to do that work. And that got me, I wouldn't say credibility, but a lot of awareness around myself and ozone therapy, because a lot of practitioners were like, this is great. I can give this to patients, and it's something that I can use to educate them. From there, the equipment at the same time was really expensive, so started to develop equipment for the therapy and brought the cost down and a bunch of other stuff, which changed the whole market for it, which isn't huge, but changed the whole market for it. And then yeah, just kind of been a slingshot and a roller coaster ride since then of doing all sorts of stuff.
That's amazing. So actually, one question I have for you is, so I'm a former police officer, former firefighter. um, one of the questions that I had, the notes that I wanted to ask you was, how can this apply to firefighters who are exposed to toxins and environmental hazardous materials? Like, how can ozone treatment apply and be beneficial to someone like who's in the firefighting industry?
Yeah, I think well, there's a couple of different ways to think about it. First of all, ideally you're not getting exposed to toxins and those kinds of things, obviously, but just with the job itself, that's not really much of an option because you're exposed to it. But as a preconditioning agent for insults to the body, so in the instance of like they did a study on rats where they'll do like preconditioning with ozone therapy, and then they'll induce heart attack to the rat. And you'll see that the heart like almost holds like true form to what it originally was. Like it's much more resilient to the stress. And that's seen in a number, there's ones on people as well, a lot of studies, even double blind, on chemotherapy. So if they precondition with ozone therapy prior to doing chemotherapy, quality of life is the difference between the two groups, the control and the ozone therapy, is about a 70% difference in
Wow.
quality of life metrics. So huge, huge ramifications. And the reason for that is because it's giving our cells protection by raising its antioxidant defenses. A lot of these toxicities and that kind of thing cause oxidative stress, which is when you get too many free radicals in the body and they start to break the cells down. So if you are preconditioned with antioxidant capacity, you're not going to have nearly as much of a negative effect. There'll still be some, and it's not going to get rid of it, but it definitely helps. And there's a lot of stuff that does that. Just being a healthy person, eating well, getting good food, getting good rest, having good connection, like all those things have an implication on that. But ozone therapy is pretty well studied as a preconditioning agent. On the flip side, say you are undergoing, like you have a toxicity that is kind of wreaking havoc on your body. It can help by improving, and this is all stuff that is pretty well researched, improving microcirculation, so blood flow to all areas of your body. It sounds kind of benign, but it's actually pretty important, being able to get blood flow properly to the brain, to the organs, all these different things that can kind of harbor and hold toxicity. That's nutrient and gas exchange that happens in that microcirculation process. So if we're improving that, what happens is you get better nutrient delivery to the cells, and then it's also accepting the byproduct that was built up and the garbage that's built up and allowing your body to dispense of it. There's more to it, but those would be the primary things I'd say.
Right. And within the fire service, I mean, we're known for the last, 2 decades for saying, prevention is way better than, right. We're putting way more money into fire prevention rather than dealing with the aftermath. So it's the same thing with health and with ozone, right? Put the money in beforehand, do the work beforehand so that you come out on the other side without having those effects and having to deal with the toxicities on the back end, right? That's what it sounds like you're kind of saying is the primary benefit to ozone is preventative treatment.
Yeah, I mean, preventative with the caveat that it's not going to solve the problem, but it's going to help.
Right.
So
Mitigate.
it's not, mitigate, exactly.
Awesome. So I don't know, actually, I'm kind of going down this rabbit hole of ozone for the first time. How are the treatments delivered? What are the options for treatments?
Yeah, there's a lot of different ways. Gwyneth Paltrow just went on and it was funny. She just went on a podcast and was like, I've been doing rectal ozone therapy and it's been really helpful. And then she got a lot of like mainstream news things being like, oh, that's bizarre, that's weird. And I was like, so apparently it takes about 8 years to normalize something like that.
I saw that.
Yeah. So that's one delivery mechanism, is like an enema essentially. And that's like for people that are unwell, it's a really accessible way to do it at home. But that kind of messes with most people mentally. So I would say the coolest way and the most effective is probably doing an IV, intravenous. So that's when they take some blood out of the vein and they mix the ozone gas into the blood and then they put it back in. And it causes a little stress to that blood, which is exactly what we want. We want that mild stress because that causes the body to do this like little bit of freak out and be like, oh, we need to fix up a bunch of stuff. And what it does is it improves oxygen efficiency. So you're actually able to metabolize oxygen way more effectively. So for athletes, there was a study done in 60 athletes that were semi-pro soccer players, and they had a control as well. But the group that did ozone therapy during their training program, which I think was 12 weeks long or 8 weeks long, they had a 28% increase in VO2 max. And then there was another study done where they had I believe 18% increase in anaerobic threshold. So you're able to utilize your oxygen more effectively. So what does that mean? That means you can run longer, you have more stamina, essentially. You're not going to fatigue out as quickly because you're recruiting your reserves of oxygen and utilizing it all more effectively. And oxygen is like the number one thing that we need to be able to create energy. So it's used in like every metabolic system. And then yeah, so it does a ton of stuff. I kind of lost my train of thought there, what the
Sorry, that
question
was
was, but
yeah. So it was like, what are the methodologies of
oh, yep.
so one's rectally, one's you could do intravenous. I saw you did. I wanted to ask you, but I saw on one of your Instagram things doing for your water, right? An O2 or an ozone water infuser. I don't know what you refer to it as, but
Yeah, so it sounds gimmicky and kind of fake because there's so many different application routes, but essentially how it works is that it responds differently based on the tissue that it's exposed to, and it can have different properties to it based on that. So it's almost selective in a way, almost intelligent, but it's really not the ozone. It's your body's response to it that's intelligent, and it knows what to do once it has that stimulus. It's like a lot of stuff, like exercise or sauna or ice baths or whatever. And it can be delivered in a lot of different ways. So there's the IV, the enema. You can do it into the ears for ear infections. You can do it onto the skin for like gangrene, MRSA, that kind of stuff, infections on the skin. You can do ozone water. You can drink it for Helicobacter pylori or giardiasis, like infections that are actually sitting in the stomach. And there's a number of different ways that you can do it. You can do like regenerative injections into joints, helps with like herniated discs or partial tears, just to help stimulate some healing response in that area. So there's all sorts of different ways that you can use it, but the most effective is definitely like from a full body systemic perspective, because if you put it into the ears, that's not going to benefit the whole body. That's going to be good for your ear infection, but not a whole lot of other stuff. Would be the IVs, the intravenous, and that's what most people use. There's a lot of treatments done on that therapy every single year.
so if someone wanted to do that, the best way would be to go online and find someone locally that does ozone therapy, or what's your recommendation for someone who wants to actually try?
Yeah, so it's in like every major city. Once the more remote you get, the more difficult it's going to be to find somebody who does it. But if you just Google map ozone therapy near me, it'll pull up a list of people that say ozone therapy on their website. But keep in mind, there's a lot of different ways to use it. So you can use it even in aesthetics. So I don't know if you're familiar with PRP, but platelet-rich plasma. You pull out, and you can use that for like not fillers, but they attempt to rejuvenate the skin with that. You can use it in combination with that. So there's a lot of different ways it's applied. So if you find a list of practitioners that do it, you do need to go to their website and make sure that it's the format that you're looking for.
Awesome. Let's talk for a minute about because one thing that I love is cold exposure. So I know you do quite a bit of cold exposure, and I know you've had some success in treating, or you might say curing, your asthma. I'd love for you to talk about and tell me just a little bit about how that came about and what your experience was like.
Yeah, well, I don't use the word cure, and the reason is because I'm personally N of one, so that means I am my own experiment essentially and seeing how it goes. But the reason I don't say cure is because I don't know if it's going to come back at some point. So maybe it will. But yeah, I guess it'll be a while till I feel comfortable saying, yeah, it's totally gone, never coming back. But I would say that all my symptoms of asthma are gone and have been gone for about 6 years since I started. And I'm not sure on the time frame. It's somewhere between 5 and 7 years, to be totally honest. But what happened was, I get chest tightness during, like, I would wheeze during running, just general chest tightness. Used to do a lot of like fitness stuff and fitness coaching, so that was a little bit of a problem for any long distance kind of stuff. And I would go over to my wife's family in the Olympic Peninsula up in Washington during the summers. Really beautiful area, and they have these inlets from the ocean. And the water there, it would be like a nice day, like 85 degrees Fahrenheit out. You sound Canadian, so yeah. I don't know what that equates to. But yeah, so I don't know what the Celsius is, but
probably 17, 18
nice.
degrees, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, really nice day out, right?
Yeah.
And so I'd jump in the water, and the water would be cold, but not like, freezing, like pretty normal, like for an area like that, like not overly cold. But my lungs would constrict so much that when I jumped in the water, and we're around on floaties and that kind of thing, and people are talking and just having a good time, and I'm like trying to talk and like doing that thing, and it would really mess with me. Just it was just embarrassing, honestly. So I was like, well, fuck that, I'm gonna try jumping into cold showers and see if I can practice this thing so that maybe my lungs will get stronger. And so I started just doing cold showers and cold tap water baths and doing like intentional breathing for a couple minutes prior. And then I found like chest tightness and all the symptoms would be just lessened or like wouldn't come back for a period of time after I did that. So like not only was it like, yes, I was getting stronger at the cold exposure, it wouldn't cause the problem, but the problems outside of it were also going away. And so I just kind of continued down that rabbit hole. And then at a certain point, I don't know when, but just I realized like all my symptoms are gone. Like they're zero. I don't wheeze when I run. I don't have any of those issues. Don't get chest tightness. And so I didn't even know about like the benefits of cold exposure. I'd seen like people do polar plunges. I thought that was just like a charity event. People do it to be kind of crazy or just have fun, whatever. I didn't know there was an actual like science behind it backing up that there are benefits to cold exposure. And so I just went down that rabbit hole, got really intrigued with it, and I love it. I do it on a regular basis. I was out of town for about 6-7 weeks until the other day. So I did my first ice bath yesterday, and yeah, so it's been a while, but typically I'm doing it like 5 to 7 times a week or somewhere in there. Just depends on the week.
That's amazing. And what do you find? So obviously I ask most guests who have experience with cold, this question. I think it might be different for you. Do you find the benefits of doing repeated cold exposures to be more physical or more mental? Like if you had to pick, I can only have one or the other benefit, the mental or the physical side. Which do you feel is more is better for you?
Yeah, I've never really noticed like a mental benefit from it, but I think it depends on where you're at mentally and what your mindset is and what you're trying to extract from it. Like I think the intention of it makes a difference in that. And I never had that intention of having like mental strengthening. I do notice a definite boost in like heightened senses and focus afterwards for a couple hours. So there is a mental side and just a good mood. It releases a lot of happy chemicals in your brain. So it helps from that. But, and I do need that to a degree because, like when I get into I have this reward cycle with the ice baths. I don't go into it like dreading doing an ice bath. I actually look forward to doing it. I plan out when I can do it, and it's like something I really enjoy. But the reason for that is because of that reward cycle is I know how I feel after I do one. And so that's been really important for me to continue doing them. But I'm definitely more of a fan of the physical side of it, personally.
That's amazing. Yeah, most people I talk to, it's more they don't want to do it, and it's more the mental barrier of like, I don't want to do this. So they've done something in their day that they had resistance to, so they feel like they've accomplished something and they've overcome something hard. And so a lot of people, it's the opposite. And I thought that would be the case for you, that it's more the physical side, because that's seems like how you're built. So that's cool. Last topic I kind of want to dive into is I just saw a video on you talking about mouth taping and taping your mouth at night. And
Yeah.
yeah, I'd love to hear about your experience with that and what got you going down that road. It seems like you go down a lot of rabbit holes and and then just start experimenting, which I love. So yeah, tell me about your experience with mouth taping.
Yeah, probably experimenting too much to a degree. I love the experience of things, and especially when other people are involved, because I can learn and just kind of experience it for myself and see what's up with something. But with mouth taping in particular, like I didn't know like you're supposed to breathe through your nose until I was like 20. Like just like super basic thing. Nobody ever said it. And so like chronic mouth breather, and that actually changes your face, that changes your palate, that changes like a lot of different things in your breathing mechanisms, and it's not a good thing, honestly. So I've always had issues with and I have like a really severe tongue tie as well that I still haven't resolved. I probably should. But anyway, just at night, like can't not breathe through my mouth, just with the way that my facial structure has developed over time. And so it's kind of makes sense. Like just throw some tape over your mouth and then you're going to breathe through your nose. You're going to get better sleep. Like whenever I do it, the reason I do it is not because like people say it's a thing that you should do. It's because I do notice I am way more energized in the morning when I do that. And so I think it's been a huge advantage for me personally is just doing that nasal breathing. I feel so much better in my sleep when I'm able to do that. It is kind of a problem if I'm congested. My voice is a little bit lost right now and I have a little bit of congestion because I've been on the road for a few weeks, but typically, yeah, it's a really, really helpful thing for me. And it will redevelop your facial structure over time. I don't know if you've ever looked up like before and after pictures of like going from mouth breather to nasal breathing. Have you seen that stuff?
Yeah, you actually add bone density to your like sinus cavity, right?
Yeah, so it's like exactly how your body was designed is to breathe through your nose, not your mouth. Like if you breathe through your mouth, it messes a lot of stuff up. So it changes your facial structure to be more symmetrical and more attractive, which is what sells most people. But
Right.
it also helps, just with your overall energy. Like you're getting more, I don't really know much about it. I'm going to put the caveat on that. But I do notice that when I am practicing nasal breathing, whether it's through working out or sleeping, that I feel tremendously better.
Right. I notice it. I mean, I've taped my mouth shut for years, probably the same as most people. Some nights I don't, and I notice it and I'll wake up super dry mouth. I don't feel good, right? Like I notice, or if the tape comes off in the middle of the night, I'm like, I notice a difference when I've woken up and my mouth is open and it doesn't feel normal anymore, which is a cool place to be, right?
Yeah. And it's really funny, like posting that stuff on Instagram because people are like, oh, you're going to kill somebody. They're going to stop breathing. I'm like, are you kidding? Like, if a little piece of tape can kill you, uh, I don't want to sound insensitive, but maybe it should. Like, like if you stop breathing, you're gonna wake up and just rip it off. I mean, like if somebody starts strangling you in the night, you're not just gonna die in your sleep. You're gonna wake up and try to fight it back. Like your body's just programmed for that. So there's no risk to it, and a lot of upside, I think.
Yeah, and the only caveat I would say is because I've thought the same thing and people have said the same thing, and I went down it because we had younger kids at the time. They're a little bit older when I started, but just with smaller kids, the danger would be just a vomiting and asphyxiation and them not, or if their hands are whatever, right? So young kids.
Yeah, I didn't consider young kids. I was talking in the context of adults.
Adults, consenting adults who know should be able to take a piece of tape off their mouth and
Yeah.
100%. Yeah. Oh, that's amazing. I don't know. Is there anything you want to add to the conversation? I'd love for you to tell people about kind of your Simply O3, what you guys are about. If people want to get more involved in you, what you're doing, or your website, or purchase any equipment from you, yeah, just kind of a time for you to share what you're about, what you're doing.
Yeah, well, I want to just say that I popped on the podcast not to sell stuff. I'm not like a salesperson or anything like that. That being said, if ozone therapy is something you're interested in, there's two places you can go to learn about it. First is drsozone.com, doctorsozone.com, and that just has a lot of good information on what this thing is and how you can use it and what it's used for, and it's all cited. So if you read an article as citations, you can go into the journals, the studies, and that kind of thing. And then the second thing is like simply03.com is the equipment side of stuff. So if you got into it and you felt like it'd be beneficial for you or you run a clinic or whatever it is, those would be the two websites that you go to.
Amazing. And if people want to find you online or on Instagram or where are you for Twitter, or do you do any of that stuff?
I don't do Twitter. I never got into it.
Me neither.
Which apparently, I don't know, people love it and hate it at the same time. So I'm kind of glad I never got into it. But yeah, my Instagram is Micah for Health. I've been kind of lazily working on it for the last year, and I try to put out good content as well as I can. But at the very least, I think it'll introduce people to some new things. So like whether that's ice baths or methylene blue or mouth taping or whatever, I get a lot of exposure to different ideas and things, and I try to introduce them on there, and stay within my bounds of what I understand. So I don't go off and just like with the mouth breathing or nose breathing, I don't know what the physiological benefits are. I know more nitric oxide. That's a parroting thing that I've been told. But generally speaking, I'm putting out stuff that I like understand and try to expose people to new things. And then in the future, I am planning on developing a little bit more show and tell style, like the ice bath videos, where it's a little bit more like I'm actually demonstrating what's going on rather than just speaking it. But yeah, that's Micah for health, all spelled out, not the number 4 on Instagram. And that's pretty much the best way. And people can message me on there or communicate with me there.
That's awesome. And that's where I found you. And that's where I've gleaned a ton of value and just found a bunch of different rabbit holes and research that I want to go down and go on. I was on your website this week and go to doctors. What is it? Doctors for Ozone or Doctor? What's the first website?
Yeah, it's Doctor's Ozone, but
Doctor's
it's
Ozone.
not spelled out. So it's drsozone.com.
Okay.
I have the domain Dr. Ozone all spelled out as well. I probably should just transfer it over to that because it's a lot easier to
Yeah.
say.
Either way. Anyways, I highly recommend going to check Micah out. Micah, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you you being here, taking the time and just sharing some of your knowledge.
Yeah, I appreciate it, man. Thank you.